So first thing I want to say thank you to the McPhees for having me here and for all of you to give me the opportunity to share a little bit of what I've been doing and a little bit of my background, because I think I put you in perspective of what you can do with these ideas and these concepts that you're learning here today, especially when you understand that I came from a place where this was completely left field, no idea about any of this. So, not to take too much time, I think that the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is some of the ideas that I developed as I went through this journey based on these concepts of the Perpetual Wealth Code. And I think you may find some of these interesting. And I see that a lot of people are interested in perhaps doing something different now that you realize that you can do more and that you have sort of a safety behind you with the idea of the policies and the cash values. And I think when you get itchy feet and you start to try to do something creative, well, I've done something that may be a little bit different from what other people do, but perhaps gives you an idea that resonates with you the same way it resonated with me when I first heard about it. So hopefully you find something useful in my story. So I'll start from the beginning. Let's see if I can get this right with my slides. So I have a funny story because I was born in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and it's quasi the beginning. And then my parents moved to South Africa. So when Argentina was going through the up and down collapses that it goes every 2 weeks, my parents decided, we're done. I'm done. My dad said, I'm done with this. We're moving to South Africa. It's a great opportunity, land of opportunity, so we moved there. And when we arrived, it was an amazing place for about 5 minutes. And then it's like, if you think of a roller coaster, when we got on the roller coaster just as it's tipping over the biggest drop. And then we got into South Africa, and it was an incredible experience nonetheless, but we got into South Africa, and it was an incredible experience because I see a lot of changes. We lived through a very historical time when everything changed in 1994, but we saw a country that was amazing. It was a developed nation plummet to a third world country very quickly in less than 20 years. But when I was there, I had an incredible life. I wouldn't change it for anything. And it was there that I started studying. I went to university, and there I make a decision. And my decision was to enter a field that was incredibly profitable, something that was guaranteed I was going to make a great living. So I decided to study ancient history and classical history, and also music anthropology and classical guitar. Big applications in the real world. And while I was studying, I made a lot of friends, and then we decided to do something also as interesting, which was to start a rock band. So, and then started playing music, and then when I was finishing my studies, much to the dismay of my mom, I decided that I was not going to go to England. I had an opportunity to go to England and continue studying classical history, which was also, I don't know what that would have done for me, except become a teacher. And they said, Mom, I'm going to a place that I've never been, and I'm going to be a rock musician. So this is a picture of what I used to do, and that's me on the corner there. I think I'm on your right-hand side. And this feels really weird here, because this is the first time I'm on stage dressed like this. And also, I don't have a guitar to hide behind, or a singer, or loud noises, or a dark room with people that don't know really what's going on. That's the case with all those people you don't see there. So, and also this mic is kind of tripping me up a little bit because I feel like the Backstreet Boys. Not decent rock musician will be caught with one of these unless you're Phil Collins for obvious reasons. But anyway, so we came here. I always wanted to come to California. It was a dream since I was a kid to come to California. I love movies, science fiction, skateboarding, surfing. And California was the place. So I convinced all my bandmates, and they had sold everything, gave everything up. And we went with our master plan to become rock stars. And so off we went when we came to California. Now, when we came here, we continued with the band, and this is another picture with the band that we formed here. I'm there on the corner, and that was one of our last gigs here. The one was one of the last gigs we played in South Africa. This was just before a show we played in Hawaii. We got to do a great tour in Hawaii. Good for me, because the guy in the middle there and I, we friends from South Africa. We came here together, and we're surfers. We surfed all our lives. So it was amazing to be in Hawaii and play music and surfing. It was a great experience. So that, maybe that was like sort of the beginning of the end kind of thing of our master plan. And maybe you have heard this cliche that being in a band is like being married to 4, 5, 6 different people. Everyone says that. So my master plan was destroyed by a series of messy divorces. across a few months. And then instead of being a rock musician, I ended up being some sort of marriage counselor for a few months. But while all this was happening, while I'm moving here to the United States, I started working because obviously we weren't making enough money while we were playing, and so I started working for a friend or for a family of my friend, my friend's cousin. He was a really, really, I would say, I used to think he was wealthy, but he was a rich, very rich individual. I mean, he had a lot of money. He was in this action sports industry. He had a giant apparel company, and they were making over $100 million a year, and he was involved with a lot of other people in the same area. And I was also exposed to a lot of the music industry in Los Angeles and Orange County. So I got to see a lot of interesting things that while all this was going down, and then while I saw my master plan sort of disassembled and shattered in front of me, I started to observe other things. And one of the things that I started to notice was that these people that I saw, that I was living day to day, and I was really fortunate because this guy was really open, and he didn't pay that well. I never made more than $1,000 a month. I was kind of his personal assistant, quote-unquote servant, 24 hours a day. I was doing all sorts of funny things. Very interesting life. Anything from like cleaning the house to being a proxy at a board meeting that he didn't feel like going. Very eccentric character. More of a rock star than a rock star will ever be. If you want to imagine this guy, he's like the Keith Richards of the fashion world. A very, very interesting guy. But through him and his friends, I got exposed to people that had a lot of money. But the one thing I've noticed was that these people were making a lot of money. And I mean a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars a year. And as fast as they were making it, they were spending it. Like they couldn't keep it. And to me, when I first landed here, I never seen so much money in one place. I came from 2 third-world countries. Money like that doesn't exist. And that was something that sort of like started to like switch on half of a light bulb at that moment because of what's going on, especially also in the music industry, because the music industry is the same. A lot of people are making a lot of money, and people get a record deal, and the next day they will show up with a $100,000 car. And some of them will, gold plate their rims for no reason. I said, what are you guys doing? And this doesn't make any sense. This is not going to be here forever. And artists are a very particular crew because they are different. They have a disconnect with money. And they make a lot of money, but basically what they do is they just shove it all in the cannon and they aim somewhere and they shoot it, to a general direction of something entertaining, and that's where it goes. So it comes in at 2 miles an hour and it leaves at 150. So they never get to keep the money, unless some of them are smart and they're lucky and they have a good manager, but that happens very rarely. The manager is the one that keeps all the money in a lot of occasions. So that was intriguing to me, and that relates to the idea of having a lot of money and being wealthy. I didn't connect those two, and I know that you've heard about the idea of being wealthy here, and that was something that I couldn't quite figure out at that point, but it didn't make sense. I thought, well, these people have all this money. How can they not know where money comes and how to use it? Because they were losing it, and losing it, it's like we were shoveling money out the door for no reason. And to the point that some of them, these people are really wealthy. Some of them are broke, and some of them are not. But these were multi-millionaires that are like literally selling their properties right now. So, and that was half of the light bulb, like I said. The other half happened with me being an artist. The other cliche is that you're a starving artist. Well, that's what we were. And I was living on what I used to call the $20 cycle. $20 will get me to the next $20, to the next $20. I get my paycheck, pay rent, and then I started to figure out how to make $20 at the time. And $20 was a fortune. So one day, I wake up, and I'm going to look at my bank accounts because I knew I had to pay some things, and I knew I had some things that would come through, and I had perfectly timed how the bank charged and how long it took to charge. When you go to the debit card and pay with the debit card, it takes 2 days. If you do credit, it takes 3 or 4 days. So that's how I lived for a long time. And then lo and behold, instead of seeing my $20.65, all I had was $735 in overdraft fees. And that was like if you take a cannon and you shoot a ball straight to my chest. That was how I felt at that moment. And then I paced around. I get really, the second light, the half of the light bulb went on. And well, not really at that moment. It took about 2 hours after I paced up and down my room saying a lot of things I can't repeat here today in 2 languages. So I can extend it for a while, So then I sat in front of the computer and said, I'm going to figure out what they're doing because this is not right. And I sat there for like 3 hours until I figured out what they had done with the numbers, and I marched onto the bank, and I made a really good friend that day at the bank, but he was so patient with me. And then he put me on the phone, and I talked to the bank people for about over 2 hours. I spoke to them complaining and asking, don't you know how to add 2 plus 2? How much is 2 plus 2? 4? Okay, well, that's what it says here on my numbers. And eventually, they gave me my money back. And not only that, they gave me the money back, my account had $100 extra, which was like, I was wealthy. I was a millionaire at that time because it was 5 $20 cycles. I could live for like months now, just go on and on. So that moment was like, wow, okay, what happened here? So then I went back home and then I said, I've got to figure this out. Because obviously this music thing is not going to happen the way I thought it was going to happen. So I got to figure out how things work, how money works, where it comes from, where it goes. Because if I don't, I will always be at the mercy of the banks. And that's what ignited the idea for me to start learning. So I always liked to read all my life. And I stopped reading the things that I was reading about history, music, and philosophy, and all sorts of different random things. So I'm just going to learn about money and economics and how to work with money and all these different things that relate to how money, flows through society. And it was through that journey that essentially I landed on some website, and they ask, they didn't ask, they ask you for a little bit of money. I think it was a couple $100 to learn how to become your own banker. And at that moment, coming fresh from this argument with the banker, they said, well, that's something that, I want to do this, no matter what. And I told my wife, my girlfriend, and I said, we have to do this. So I paid, I listened to the interview, and then the guy recommended 6 books, and I bought them all, and I read all of them. And then the last one that I read was Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. And that's the one that made the most sense. And then being a little bit OCD like I am, I looked for the number, and I called them immediately because what they were saying on the book didn't match what the guy was trying to sell on the other. And now you know about the different products. So the guy was trying to sell a product that wasn't the kind of policies that we all have come to learn about here. And I called, and I spoke to Nelson Nash's son-in-law, and then he put me in the right course. He spoke to me for almost a couple of hours, and then he gave me a list. He said, call some of these guys and figure out who you can work with. And, it was a list of about 30-plus agents that he gave me. And then I called a couple of people, and I didn't feel comfortable with them, especially because they would get antsy after I asked maybe 20 questions, and to me that wasn't right. I wanted more answers. And then randomly, I was about to give up, and then I picked a number in the middle of the list, and it was Tom McPhee's number. And I called Tom, and immediately, within a couple of minutes, I said, this feels different. And someone said a word today that it made sense to me. Within 5 minutes, what came to mind, which I didn't know how to put words to it, was integrity. It felt like this person had integrity, and he loved what he was doing, and he never stopped me from asking questions. And I've asked him so many, and I kept him on the phone over 2 hours. And out of the blue, just picked up the phone, and they put me through to him, and he was so nice and generous with his time. And at the end of the thing, there was the deal sealer for me was, do you have any more questions? And I'm like, impossible. I just asked you so many questions, like, this guy's the guy. And so that moment, I hung up the phone, and then literally I got into, and then 2 days later, I got into the car, and I always wanted to drive around the country, and I took this picture because this is my pet vehicle, my first car that I ever bought, and it's got 300,000 miles on it, and my wife doesn't like it because it costs more than a new car. I put so much money into it. That costs more like a Prius. But so I got into the car, drove all the way to Utah. Unfortunately for Nelson Nash, there was only 7 people there for the 2 days, 7, 8 people. So he was exposed to me and my questions. He was so nice, and he highly recommended Tom. And then the next day, I think I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, and I drove the longest distance that I've ever driven in my life up to that point, which was just under 900 miles in one day, all the way from Utah across to Oregon. And then the next days, I met the McPhees, and then it was a great meeting. I met the whole family. It was incredible, and I was convinced. I'm done. I'm going to do it. This is it. I'm going to do this. And then I went back to California, but not really. I went to Canada with that car all the way to the middle of British Columbia, and then I drove back all the way to California. So that trip was about almost 5,600 miles in one trip, and still alive. Oh. So but it was not to be, because after that meeting where I was convinced, I think I took another 40 hours of Tom's time. I called him 40 more times and asked him more and more questions because I wasn't convinced, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's not that I wasn't convinced. I wanted to be sure, 1,000%. I couldn't make a mistake with this. And Tom was so nice, and he kept on answering all my questions, and he gave me, recommended more books, and then the books will, elicit more questions, and then I think that at one point Tom said, no more books for Max, because otherwise we know you're going to end with this, so he's going to keep on asking and asking, and he's never going to finish. So now the reason, and then after all this question, then I was ready, and then I did sign up, and I opened up 2 policies, and then I opened up another one later on. And the reason that I was so intent on discovering every single aspect, I couldn't make a mistake, was because, as I told you before, I was living on a $20 cycle. I've never seen more than $20 of one. If I had $20 or $40 or $100, an incredible fortune. But my wife and I, through this learning curve, basically what happened was I also started reading a little bit about real estate, and I lived in Laguna Beach at the time. And there was some crazy deals going on with the ups and downs of the market, and I was asking people about this. My friends thought I was crazy. What are you talking about, $1 million real estate deals? You're not having 2 cents to your name, And what happened was that I learned a lot, and then an opportunity came up. And from those crazy ideas, I knew how the numbers worked, and this opportunity was to buy a property. And we didn't know it at the time with my wife, but basically her mom was getting sick and wanted to retire. She hadn't told anyone. And one day she says, I've sold a house. And I said, what do you mean you sold a house? So I said to my wife, this is not right. If she's going to do this, we better buy the house, and we better help her to do what she wants to do. So we talked to her. She agreed with us. We promised her that if she sold us the house as a family deal, at the same price she was selling it, but as a family, because we wouldn't qualify, we didn't have enough accolades to be approved by the banks. So she sold us the house, and then the house came with a credit line. And the credit line is something that we were going to use to fulfill the promise that we made to her, which is we were going to take care of her, especially all her needs if they became more expensive, her medical needs. And so all of a sudden went from having $20 to a big jump of having access to a couple $100,000 or more. And now it wasn't me. It wasn't just me selling everything and going to another country and becoming, like a rock star or whatever the case may be. I had a responsibility. I had my mother-in-law. I had my wife. So I had to be sure of what I was doing at the first step. It was a huge step, from $20 to a couple $100,000 is a massive step. And I did indeed sign up for the policies, and that was the magical moment for me, because once I did it, once I understood everything, I felt a sense of freedom. And that's where I was coming to the notion of an idea is when you get itchy feet, because after a month or so that I had the money, I said, what can I do now? Because now I had one I never had before in my life, which is a net. If you live in a third world country, if I mentioned this before, but you live always on the razor's edge. Always. You never know what's going to happen. The economy is going to collapse. The country is going to explode. You're going to run out of money, or you're going to lose a job, or your dad is not going to have a job, and it's always going to go like this. But for the first time, I said, oh, well, I have a net. Now I can go to the trapeze and do some crazy spins or something, and then if I fall, at least I won't fall flat on my face. At least I have somewhere to fall back. And the most important thing for me, which still continues to be the most important thing, it gives me peace, is that if something happens to me, that promise will be fulfilled, which we have been fulfilling up to this point, and my wife and her mom will be okay, regardless. So when I found that sort of, this moment of peace, and I went into what was another sort of like a detour from where I was going to. And it brought me back to an idea, the market. I was fascinated by the stock market, and it was an exciting thing to do. It's like, okay, fortunes are being made and lost, and it's really interesting, and it's all these cool things that are happening with the market and these exciting companies and whatnot. But I was always skeptical because I wanted control. And in the stock market, you have no control. Or so I thought. If you invest, there's nothing you can do. You're at the mercy of the market. So to me, it became kind of like the idea of like exploring something that was kind of forbidden. But through the learning curve, I landed up in a seminar, and in this seminar, they were presenting about something else. This crazy, amazing Australian guy comes and he presents this incredible way of looking at the market from a different perspective, and that caught my ear immediately because it answered all my questions. It was like, control, check, you can have control. Make money up front, you know how much money you're going to make? Check. You get to keep your money if the market drops? Check. So it was, okay, I can put insurance on can I insurance my trades when I place a trade? Can I control my risk? It was amazing. So, and then the other thing that he introduced me to was the notion of compound interest. Because we all heard about compound interest, but this is something that we're using on our website now. It's like, this quote that gets ascribed to Einstein most of the time is that it's the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, collects or earns it. He who doesn't pays it. And you pay it. And it's very deceptive because you're losing interest or you're paying interest when you pay credit cards, or if you don't invest, you don't make, and you don't earn anything. But what you're missing is that every month, every day that goes by, the compounding effect, it's literally making money vanish into thin air, and someone else is getting it, not you. And compound interest is very deceptive because it's very slow at the beginning, but at one point it hits this curve when magic happens. But you cannot see it because of the deceptive nature of the beginning, So another example that someone told me that put this in perspective for me was, if you take 30 steps, we as people tend to think linearly, and compound works exponentially. So linearly, if I say someone like yourself, you take 30 steps, to your left or to your right, you immediately know where you're going to be, and that's how we think. But if I say 30 exponential steps, how far do you think you'll go in 30 exponential steps? Every step's double. Well, first step's 2, then this 4, then this 6, this 8, then this 16. See, it doesn't seem like much. But when you get to step number 30, you'll go around the planet 26 times. But we cannot see that because that's hiding. And that's what's happening. It compounds positively and negatively. Your taxes compound against you, and the interest that you can collect and it compounds in your favor. So that was an interesting thing. So going back to the idea of the market and this concept, and the interesting part of it is like the market to me was always like it seems like a sailing analogy, It's like most people jump on a boat in the market, they don't know how to sail, you don't have any sails, and you're at the mercy of the currents and the elements. Maybe you'll end up somewhere nice, somewhere along the way. Maybe you get to retire on an island. Maybe you arrive with your boat in pieces, maybe you capsize, because you have no control. So the concept that this guy introduced me to was the idea of adding sails to your boat, of adding knowledge, sailing knowledge, so you're able to control your destination if you get hit by a storm or if you get hit by unfavorable currents. And I love that idea. And then going back to what René was presenting about something that made me understand the strategies was the idea of a house, the idea of real estate. And I was thinking as you people, everyone was asking these questions about real estate, it's incredible because this market thing is shrouded in mystery and numbers and formulas, and you have to be a genius. Nonsense. Because the stuff that you guys were asking about real estate, if you understand all these moving pieces, this is so much easier. There's only you and the market and a couple of moving pieces, way less than on real estate. And I think it's accessible to everyone. It's a different thing, it's not for everybody, but I think if you understand real estate, anyone can do this. And like you can see, I was a rock musician, history major. I started doing this and I started making a living doing this. So this strategy involves trading with options in the market. Now, options, if you look them up, they can be super risky. And on the gambling spectrum of like you're going to lose your shirt in 5 minutes, to the most conservative strategies that you can possibly think of. So conservative, in fact, that is the only thing for what it's worth that the IRS allows you to do in your 401k and your IRA. They only let you buy stock and trade this kind of strategies because they actually consider safer than owning a stock. And to me, it's called a covered call, this strategy, one of the basic strategies, and it's like a house. So think of a house. We all understand this concept. It's familiar concepts applied to a different context. And that's what sometimes people get jumbled up. It's not that you don't know. If you can subtract, if you can add, and if you can basically calculate a percentage, which you can do with a calculator, you can do this. And it's just applying those concepts that you know into a new context. Learn the context, and off you go. So the idea of the house, people buy a house, and you rent a house. You have two things. You can buy it, you hold it, and you flip it when it increases in value, or you buy it and you rent it. So this is two things that you do with house. So if you think of stocks equated to a house, you can do the same thing. You buy a stock, you sit on it. If it goes up, you sell it. If it doesn't, you freak out, you sell it, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you're broke, like most people do. And then the brokers make all the money. And say, oh, you got to sell now, and you buy this, and you got to sell that one, and buy this one now. No, that one's dropping, and they do that all the time. That's how they make a lot of money. So the idea with this is that instead of doing that, is you buy them and you rent them. It's possible to rent your stocks. So you can buy a stock and you can rent it every month. And every month you make what a lot of people have talked about here is cash flow. And cash flow is king. So you can generate enough cash flow to generate a really good return or yield on your money invested. So the money that you can make can equate to 1% a month on your money invested, or 3% a month, or more. Sometimes people are really good and they make a lot of money doing this. And also the interesting thing is that you can insure your house or your stock as well. So you can actually take a little bit of your money that you make for your rent and you can pay for insurance. And you can control your risk, which makes it really interesting. So this strategy, like as an example, the covered call, here's something that we're playing around with, the fun graphic that we're creating, is that a covered call in 10 years, if you invested $10,000, will get you $107,000 plus minus. If you had invested in Apple the same amount, one of the best performing stocks in the market right now, you make $87,000. And that's at a 2% compounding average, okay, which is, like a reasonable return. I know people that are making 5, 6, 7% a month. And if you want to make 1% and you're happy with 1%, you never have to risk any more than 6 or 7% of your capital, which was what drew me to this idea. So it's a very interesting thing that you can have controls and other avenue that you guys can pursue. It resonated with me a lot because I like this kind of thing. But it's something that perhaps you might be interested in exploring in the future. And this whole learning process led me to my next endeavor, which is this. So when I started trading, I figured that there were some tools that I needed. I wanted to save more time. I wanted to do it faster, and I wanted to do it quicker. And I absolutely hated how everything looked in the financial world. It's like it's been made for, I don't know who creates this stuff. The most boring people in the universe sit down and they say, how can we bore people and scare them not to do this? So our goal, being an artist and musician, I like painting, I like drawing, this is what I did all my life, is that we wanted to create something that is nice, something that is beautiful. And that was the journey that we undertook. Something that was simple, something that reduces the complexity. So this is some of my positions. So when you look at, and this is one of the nicest ones there are there, you look at this and you go, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Too many numbers, too small. I can't read that. What is that? You need a translator for this. You actually do when you first start, if you do this. And then I used something like this as well. You look at that, and it's the same thing. It's like these people have millions and millions and millions of those. Why don't they make it simpler? Why don't they make it nicer for people to come and be able to do this? So that was a question that I wanted to answer. So we went from this. So if you take those 2 pages and combine all the information, and this is our version 1, is to look to something like this, where this contains the information that those 2 pages contain and much more. And it's all automated, and it lets you do a lot of things. It sends you emails, text messages, and it helps you track it. So basically, if you're trying to learn how to trade, when you learn, basically you have to go out there and dig a hole, and you dig with your hands, or you dig with a shovel, which is like this sort of trading platforms that you have today. Or you can actually get an automated bobcat that works for you, and you can dig the perfect hole, whatever you want, with minimum effort. And that's what we're trying to create for people. And the idea for us is basically this, is we trying to bring a little bit more like a human touch, something more fun. And, I love art, and that's Picasso. My friend said to me, why do you have Bruce Willis on your cover? And I was like, you're ruining my mojo here. I love that image. It's not Bruce Willis. But the idea is this, if you're tired of the bull, it's like forget the status quo, redesign your portfolio, your financial future to the power of options and trading options, which is something, that we wanted to do. Bring this to people. And this idea, again, this is the same image. That's my wife sitting. We were in Africa, and I was actually trading that day, and we were on a safari, and I took that picture, which I love, and I use it all the time. It's the idea, we don't know if we're going to use that, but it's a side hustle with muscle. Everyone has a side hustle, something that you do on the side, and something that might be of interest to you. Imagine if your side hustle can, in 4 hours, replace 40 hours of work. And it's absolutely possible. It is, because it was possible for me. And we're trying to get this right now, to be successful at this, you have to spend about 7 hours a week. With the program that we build, once you learn how to use it comes down to 5 hours a week, and we hope to reduce it to 2 hours a week. We want to bring it into complete automation, where it does most of the work for you, so you can be anywhere, anytime in a safari, wherever you want to be, and just can make money in autopilot almost, with something that you have control of, cash flow from your investments. Okay, so that's what I've been. sort of started being a rock musician, and my goal was to make money so I can continue doing that. I still do that. I still, that with what I do at home, I'm in touch with the art world. We have a lot of video productions at our place and stuff like that. And I love it, and I want to make, my goal is to make more money so I can actually explore some of these ideas. I'd love to go back to university and continue studying really, really profitable subjects like philosophy and things like that, but I'm hoping that, but this has been good because it started like a website, like a spreadsheet, went to a website and then turned into a tech startup, so like really musician with this, but that's where I ended, and it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the help that I got from the McPhees and that sort of safety that I had to propel with this money. We self-funded all this, and we did it with the money that we got, and then we were able to do many other things. And guess what? If it doesn't really work, it doesn't matter because the money is there, and that gives me a sense of peace that I cannot even begin to describe. And I think hopefully you'll find some of this interest. If anyone wants to learn some more about it, I forgot my last slide. I never created it. But you can email me. My name is Max, and my email is max@TradeCheetah. You can get it from the McPhees. And if you have any questions, I love talking about this. I do, so welcome to ask me any questions. I can also tell you some funny stories about rock bands, and that's why I got my notes, because when you play for a while in a rock band, you tend to forget your own life. And I wasn't like trying to... but I got through them, I think. So thank you very much for listening to me. I really appreciate the time. So thank you.